it may be that the love hug is characterized by a hug where classically you wait till about 0.618 through the duration of the hugging process before your hug pressure comes to a maximum. We did a very, shall we say, tongue-in-cheek, humorous conversation about this at the web article, danwinter.com/touch, where we described a professor who realized that his wife was requiring him to become an expert in hugging, and so he wanted to get the best academic advice on how to hug. But you can see, actually, the little funny story we used was that supposing you had selected someone that you wanted to express love to, you would say to your proposed experimental huggee, as it were, here I'm going to administer this test hug, and you then squeeze them very carefully in this way so that the moment of maximum pressure doesn't happen so quickly. It's a very gradual process where you initiate pressure comes to a maximum 2/3 the way, 0.61, in the duration of the event, and then you release gently, so that what happens is the long wave and the short wave are divided at the golden mean cut. So they interfere with each other such they produce another wave which then interferes with the short wave that produces another wave that interferes with the shorter wave yet, always constructively until a wave cascades or chirps or beats or heterodynes down the ladder of frequencies until, and this is the question you ask of them, did you feel a tingle in your DNA? Which is really about whether or not your hug cascaded between frequencies and reached the spin density of the genetic material from the long wave of pressure in your hug. So you see that this could even be a beginning of a recipe for Tantra, in that we begin to describe how true coherent emotion is what's called adiabatic process. Adiabatic means energy conserving. It means you don't waste energy when you don't need to. In chemistry, it means that no energy is wasted or leaks away. In magic, adiabatic has the same meaning. It means that you know how to be peaceful and just hold your presence. And so we're beginning to understand how, in fact, these touches, which are the wave shapes of emotion, coherent emoting, coherent sending of energy in motion between frequencies. It's a cascade. It's initiating of a scalar wave. May in fact be a simple cookbook which you can practice with some exercises. One of those exercises that I would suggest after you begin to study this little bit about that emotion is a musical wave shape, which is a universal language, is that you could try sitting next to someone and doing a little experiment whereby their touch and your touch connect, and you what happens is you touch hands, and when you squeeze someone's hand or even squeeze their arm, you can change the pressure over time in your squeeze. And what you do by doing that is you decide what emotion you're going to send. So if you said to your friend, I'm going to squeeze your hand or your arm right now, and I'm going to squeeze it 3 times, and you tell me which 3 emotions I have sent to you. And what you do is you modulate your pressure. The touch that says joy is a touch where the moment of maximum pressure occurs 1/6 into the duration of the event, and it has more of a release to it. If you look at that picture at the article danwinter.com/touch. Whereas the touch that says anger is a touch where the moment of maximum pressure is 1/7 into the duration of the event, and it has less release to it. So there's what it does is the touch that says anger, by being a ratio of 1/7, sends maximum destructive interference, which is very useful, as we say, if you're shooing money changers out of a temple, that you've actually created destructive interference. Whereas the touch that says love is a touch where the moment of maximum pressure is very much later into the duration of the squeezing process. So this is an exercise I suggest, is that you actually practice touching in such a way that people learn the alphabet of your emotions. So this ability to emote coherently is teachable and ultimately becomes how we fabricate our ecosystems electrically by shaping the magnetic fields that come from our body. So this is part of why our web presence is called Sacred Geometry and Coherent Emotion, because coherence magnetically is how we use glandular magnetism to fabricate worlds, and as we've seen, even romantically, to bend stars. And this brings us to a conversation about the use of this touch energy to then move and store the ultraviolet of cellular metabolism, which I call the biology of blue fire. This is going to lead us to an understanding about how the creative juices of the body, which is really the sexual energy, is gathered and moved and massaged by the way attention is moved. It helps us begin to understand how even when we caress someone, we're moving, among other things, the ultraviolet, the charge envelope of gathered cellular metabolism. So to understand what I call the biology of blue fire, which is really, in a way, the raw material of sex, juice is a way to think about it, is to understand that the life of the living cell is a gathering of the long waves of food come into the cell, and then metabolism is a process, or the process, of massaging the cascade of the frequencies of the energy of that food from longer to shorter to shorter to very short wavelengths, until ultimately it's high quality, short wave, ultraviolet light, or blue fire, UV, which is the motor of meiosis and mitosis, cell division, the eros, the sex of cell metabolism. And see, one of the things we need to understand is that if you watch meiosis and mitosis, cell division, in a microscope, you can see that it's a musical dance, that you couldn't possibly describe it as enzyme A moves to enzyme B and that moves to enzyme C. No, you could only describe it as a choreography of a standing wave of music as it would fold on the surface of a liquid. And the geometry of the music that choreographs the position, for example, the alignments of the microtubules, is ultraviolet. It's UV. It's the blue fire. And so harnessing this ultraviolet or blue fire or sex juice of the cell is the determination of the timing of cell replication. That's why it's the key to cancer, for example. Cancer will never really be well understood until we model the field effect of what triggers the onset of replication. In fact, we could very usefully model the onset of cancer versus a healthy cell. Well, first of all, as described in my article at danwinter.com/cancer, frequently the healthy cell is an egg-shaped where the length to the width ratio is close to golden ratio, whereas a cancer cell is frequently much more spherical. And therefore, the cancer cell is not as able to pass frequencies between harmonics through touch. The reason is because the cascade of harmonics on an egg, where the length to width ratio is golden ratio, is a vector that sends spin off the surface of the skin, of the soap bubble. And that means that the golden ratio shaped egg in a cell configuration would be touch permissive, whereas a spherical cell would tend to hold all the inertia in the spin that it finds itself.